Austin calls for an immediate ceasefire. In a telephone conversation with Russian Defense Minister Shoigu, his U.S. colleague Austin called for a ceasefire. Ukraine warns that the EU oil embargo against Russia must not fail. U.S. Secretary of Defense calls for an immediate ceasefire. Ukraine warns EU that oil embargo negotiations will fail. Zelensky remains ready for talks with Putin. Netzagenture, German gas supplies stable. Scholz is on the phone with Putin. EU gives Ukraine another €500 million for weapons. Negotiations for soldiers in Azovstal continue. Welt Hunger Health appeals to G7 ministers of agriculture. Or Scholz, exit from Russian oil possible towards the end of 2022. According to Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Germany can do without Russian oil towards the end of the SPD politician said at the SPD's final election event in North Rhine-Westphalia in Cologne. One could do without Russian coal until the fall. The coal phase-out is not that easy, but it will probably work, says Scholz. When it comes to oil, there are problems for refineries in East Germany that are connected to Russian oil pipelines. This will probably be done by the end of the year, he adds, with a view to the sixth EU sanctions package under discussion. Russia to halt electricity supplies to Finland amid tensions over Finland's possible NATO entry. Russia will halt electricity supplies to the neighboring country from tomorrow due to outstanding payments. This was announced by the energy company RAO Nordic Oy. The Helsinki-based subsidiary of the Russian group Interrao said there was no way to pay the bills for electricity import. Ukraine, Secret Service bans 13 journalists from entering the country. The Ukrainian Secret Service SBU has issued entry bans to 13 foreign journalists since the beginning of the war at the end of February. In their provocative posts, they published false information from the front lines and discredited the Ukrainian armed forces, the agency said in a statement released. The entry ban is initially valid for 3 years. In one case, a Dutchman was deported after the publication of photos of a rocket-hit fuel depot in Odessa. After an attempt to re-enter the country, the entry ban was extended to 10 years. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has spoken to Russian Defense Secretary Sergei Shoigu for the first time since Russia attacked Ukraine, calling for an immediate ceasefire. According to the Pentagon, Austin also emphasized the need to keep communication channels open during the phone call. Austin and Shoigu last spoke on February 18, just under a week before the start of the Russian invasion of the neighboring country. The U.S. is supporting Ukraine with large arms deliveries. At the same time, under no circumstances does the government in Washington want to intervene directly in the conflict and become a party to the war. World Economic Forum with Kiev Mayor Klitschko. The war in Ukraine will be one of the dominant topics at the World Economic Forum, WEF, in Davos. Among other things, the mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, has confirmed his presence in the Swiss Alpine town. As the WEF announced, President Volodymyr Zelensky will join in virtually and give the opening speech on May 23. Among others, Deputy Prime Minister Mikhailo Fedorov, 5 members of parliament and Vladimir Klitschko, brother of the mayor of Kyiv and chairman of the Klitschko Foundation, are expected to attend. The world is at an historic turning point, and this requires us to address the current geoeconomic and geopolitical challenges urgently and quickly, the WEF said in a statement. Watch Indian Embassy in Kyiv to reopen. India plans to reopen its embassy in Ukraine. Operations in Kyiv are scheduled to resume next Tuesday, the Foreign Ministry in New Delhi said. 2 months ago, the embassy was temporarily relocated to Warsaw. India has attracted attention with its neutral stance on the war in Ukraine. The country does not condemn the war and does not support Western sanctions. Instead, it has expanded trade with Russia, and buys more cheap oil from Russia. For example, India is also heavily dependent on Moscow for its military equipment and spare parts. However, the country also has good relations with the West. Baltic ports in talks for Ukrainian agricultural exports according to its agriculture minister Mykola Salskevich. Ukraine is exploring the possibility of shipping agricultural exports via their ports in talks with Baltic. There are some large ports there that are underutilized because there are no transit deliveries from Russia and Belarus, said Solskjaer after a meeting with the G7 agriculture ministers in Stuttgart. According to him, Latvia and Lithuania would be happy if they could work together with Ukraine. But there is a big problem: how the goods should get there. In the Ukraine, the ports except for Odessa are blocked by the Russian invasion. Ozdemir, support agricultural exports from Ukraine. According to the German head of department Kim Ozdemir, the agriculture ministers of the 7 largest industrial nations have promised Ukraine help to export grain despite the Russian war of aggression. It is important to bring as much grain from the full silos in Ukraine to the plates of the people who are in need via rail, road and the Danube, said the Green politician after consultations between the G7 agriculture ministers and her Ukrainian colleague Mykola Solskjaer. However, not everything that Russia blocks in terms of export routes can be compensated for. Russia expels Romanian diplomats in a diplomatic exchange of blows with Romania. Russia has declared 10 Romanian diplomats undesirable. Corresponding information from the Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs was confirmed by the government in Moscow. On April 5, Romania expelled 10 Russian diplomats for violating the Vienna Convention. The Russian Foreign Ministry has said it rejects any attempts by Romania to blame Russia for war crimes in Ukraine. Job opportunities for refugee Russian journalists. Federal Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has called on the responsible interior authorities to quickly allow refugee Russian journalists to work from Germany. One thing is clear: the people who are here now and obviously can't go back must have the opportunity to work here, Baerbock told The Spiegel. It is in all of our interests, especially for critical journalists who want to continue reporting, the magazine quoted the foreign minister as saying. Baerbock urged that all immigration authorities pragmatically use their opportunity to issue the necessary residence permit. First Ukrainian war crimes trial in Ukraine. The first war crimes trial against a Russian soldier is scheduled to begin next week. According to Ukrainian media reports, the hearing was postponed to next Wednesday by a court in the capital Kyiv at the request of the public prosecutor's office so that it is open to the public. The soldier was therefore provided with a public defender and a translator. The 21-year-old is accused of shooting dead a 62-year-old in the Sumy region in northeastern Ukraine because he was on. The soldiers had previously requisitioned a car from civilians because their own vehicle had been destroyed. The suspect described the events in a video confession published by the SBU Secret Service. A conviction is therefore considered certain. The man faces life imprisonment. Ukrainian climbs Mount Everest and wants to set an example. Ukrainian is currently the only representative of her country to climb Mount Everest and wants to set. She spent the night after the ascent at the second high camp and then went to the base camp, said a base camp official who, among other things, records ascents. The Ukrainian flag should fly on the roof of the world, especially while our people are going through such hard times, as a symbol of the invincibility of the Ukrainian spirit, 33-year-old Antonina Samoylova told the Everest Chronicle website. Her mission to the world's highest mountain should also boost the morale of her struggling fellow citizens and President Volodymyr Zelensky at home, she said of the newspaper The Himalaya. Her father and brother would currently be fighting against the Russian troops.